creating a list of guidelines that fan films had to follow if they were going to be permitted. And unfortunately, none of the things, unfortunately, we were we were breaking all of the guidelines. Let's just put it that way. It would have been impossible for us to continue under those new guidelines. So I got a call from CBS, and they basically said, look, we have enormous respect for what you're doing, and we don't want to hurt you, we don't want to cause you trouble, but we understand that you always intended to finish the original series. How soon can you wrap it up? And that was when we kicked into high gear, and we made 4 episodes, 8, 9, 10, and 11 in 1 year, which is unheard of in a fan production setting.
Oh, yeah.
With nobody being paid, no one is paid, and nobody's making any money. But we kicked into high gear, and we finished the series. It was always my intention to finish the original series, and that's what we did. We had to do it sooner than we wanted to, but we did it, and that's the important thing.
Well, CBS' big mistake was they ventured into these other franchises of Star Trek. If they would have been smart, if they would have had their act together, they should have contacted you seriously and went your way.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but let me give you my perspective on that.
Yeah, please do.
They didn't make the new Star Trek, like Discovery, for instance. They didn't make Discovery for me. I can acknowledge, I can admit, I'm not their target audience, Gary. They're trying to cast a much bigger net. They are trying to reach a much larger audience, a younger demographic, and they've decided that the way to do that is through a much more fast-paced, aggressive, in many cases even, violent, dark, almost kind of dystopian in some ways. That's the direction they decided was the best way to reach their target audience.
And that was a big mistake. I'm not their target audience. And I understand that. No, I think that's where they made a mistake. How many times have these people, okay? A friend of my dad was a famous TV actor. They would come and see my dad every summer for a week to 2 weeks. All through I grew up to, I got married a couple times. My dad and him were best friends. They met in Korea. And so many times he would sit there and say that the networks don't know their head from blankety blank. I'll be honest with you. I have watched the new stuff that they're putting out. I can't get with it. Maybe it's because I'm an old fart. I don't know. But then I have my grandkids, okay, who are young, ranging down from, like a couple years old all the way up to in their 20s. They say the same thing. They can't get into the new series. So who's watching it?
I don't know. Obviously, I'm not the right person to answer that question.
My son's in his mid-20s, and he loves the original Star Trek, not because I was doing the books, not because I worked for a couple other Star Trek series or anything like that. He found it on his own. I never sat down and watched it with him. He found it on his own because the new movie series made him curious to go watch the old series. And he came into my office one day in the house, and he said, "Hey, Dad, I'm watching that show you wrote those books on." And I said, "What? Which one?" Because I've written several books. And I said, "Which one?" He said, "The Star Trek." And he said, "It's pretty good." He said, I'd watch it at night before bed because there was a channel out in L.A. that was airing it like from 10 to 11. And he'd watch it, and then he'd turn the lights out. And he would say he would just lie there thinking about the episode he'd seen, with the message it had gotten through to him, and everything else. And he knew I had done something for Next Generation. He wasn't talking about Star Trek Continues, Vic. This was before Star Trek Continues. So he looked at me and he said, I like that show. It's much better than the crappy one you wrote for. and so it's just, I agree with you, Gary, totally. I think CBS should have grabbed Vic and said, this is what we're going to put on streaming, and just kept going with Star Trek Continues. And who knows? Maybe they're going to come back and do that. Who knows? If enough people write in, call in.
Who knows? Who knows? You know what, though? Whenever I've talked with people about this before, why does it have to be one or the other? I mean, that was one thing that I remember thinking. Why does it have to be...
Yeah, you can have both.
Well, we could either do Discovery or we could do Star Trek Continues. Well, no. You don't have to pick one. Do them both. Because guess what? There are millions of people out there that would love Star Trek Continues that aren't really into Discovery. And there are millions of people that love Discovery that wouldn't be into the classic Star Trek. So why not give something for everyone? I mean, we built the sets. We put the production team together. It was, it was already, it required very little of anybody. And, I would love to think that we could do something like that.
Well, you know what? Look at Enterprise, how long that didn't last. Because it was lacking something. Okay? I'm not knocking it. It was lacking something. Voyager, okay? And I won't go into any more, but they were lacking something. When, the people want to see the continuance of the original Star Trek. It brings back good feelings. And you know what? Seriously.
Well, one thing people want to see is, I think people want to see the ending. I mean, Star Trek, the original Star Trek is arguably the most iconic series in television history. And yet it was just canceled in its third season, and it never had an ending. So, what we've done is truly iconic and historic. And I would love the opportunity.
It's like when you were watching Star Trek, Vic, as a kid in the 1970s, and I was watching it in the late 60s. We didn't see all the episodes. As a matter of fact, I started watching the show at the end of the first season, and I didn't see any of those early episodes until it went into syndication later. So my point being, yes, you've told the entire story now. You've gotten to the ending, but there's lots of other voyages in there that we haven't seen. And we haven't seen them because you haven't made them, but even if you had made them, we wouldn't have seen them all. So, I'm hoping somebody at CBS is listening, and the message to them is you can do 2 series. You can do one for the new crop of fans, and you can do one for the ones who love the original show, love the feel of it. Not just those characters, because you're doing those characters on the big screen, but you're doing them differently. That catches the essence of the original series, which we would have loved to have seen gone for 10 years, And there's so many more stories, like the one that I pitched to you a few weeks ago about a lost episode, and that I would love to see done. And it would just be nice to see some more of these get made.
We had a few of our own.
But CBS is corporate thinking. They think, well, you can only do one thing at a time. We're putting our money, we're putting our promotion, we're putting our attention on this, so we can't dilute it by putting our attention onto something else. And it's a shame. You just got to break through that line of thinking and say, no, there's plenty of fans out there. There's different flavors.
And you
don't
know what
have
else,
to eat
Mark?
the same flavor every night.
I mean, it would cost them nothing. It would cost them literally. I don't know if you've seen or heard or know what the budget is for Discovery. It's a lot.
Let me just
tell you,
$4 million
it's a
an
lot.
episode, isn't it?
And, what? Pardon
more,
me?
Probably more. I know the new Lost in Space on Netflix is $10 million an episode. So I wouldn't be surprised if Star Trek is up.
We made Star Trek Continues. Now, granted, everybody was a volunteer, and that would never happen again. But I mean, if we were going to do it again, I would want everybody to make a fair wage. But even then, the sets are built. The production team has done this now for our own 5-year mission and 11 full-length episodes. We know what we're doing. We know how to do it. It would cost them next to nothing to crank out hour-long shows, a continuation of our series. Unfortunately, I don't know that will ever happen. I know that we're very proud of what we did, and we would love to do more of it if the opportunity presented itself. I feel confident in saying that.
Have you tried getting an agent to try to sell your series to them? Because I can't see all this money they're dumping for. I'm going to get in trouble for this with a lot of listeners. Some of the shows that they are streaming is garbage, and they're dumping millions and millions of dollars. What you're saying, Vic, that they could come in and basically for pocket change, come out and continue giving some good quality a show that people want to see. You already proved it. I'll be honest with you. I've had some major movie stars on my show through the past year or two. Of course, they're in the horror range, actors. Mm-hmm. But they've been in a lot of indie movies too, or an indie movie costs maybe $1,500,000, $2 million, $3 million.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I watched all of them, and I'm not going to belittle them, but you know what? Their quality, the feel, the actors, what you did far surpasses what I've seen. What's going on out there, and I don't understand what is wrong with CBS. Are they? I'm going to steal this, as Thomas Lucas said. Are they that short-sighted?
Oh, let me give you an answer.
I think they are, and but the reason the quality is there is because of the caliber of the talent on this show. You can say it's a fan show, but it's a fan show of professionals. All these people who are working on Star Trek Continues are professional writers. Like we brought, as I said, Judy Burns came in. I did a script. You got Doug Drexler, who's done the special effects for a lot of the Star Trek series and movies, doing the stuff for Star Trek Continues. The lighting, the camera work, the music, everything is up there, top drawer in every respect. But here's the other thing that I mentioned once before with Vic on a different show, but we haven't talked about it here. Is Gary, how earlier you and I were talking about what was great about the first Star Trek was the theme. Roddenberry was only one of 2 producers in my entire career of pitching stories to TV shows and so forth, who after you hooked him with the idea, the hook of the story, he would say, okay, but what's the theme? What do you want to say with this? And the other one was vic-mignogna. And so that's the level of thinking that was going on at Star Trek Continues. Gene Roddenberry would have endorsed this show. And Rod Roddenberry has said that. He would have gotten behind it because they were telling stories that resonated. And I don't know if you see that on these other shows that have bigger budgets.
They don't. That's what I was trying to say, and I didn't want to be blunt about it.
Well, let me also say, you asked me a few minutes ago the question, have you ever thought of getting an agent and pitching it? There's a gentleman named Gary Hassan, who is a dear friend of mine, and he is my event manager. He books me into convention appearances. He also books Bill Shatner and George Takei and Marina Sirtis and Michael Dorn and Patrick Stewart. And he works with all of the Star Trek people. He works with Doctor Who people. He works with Battlestar people. He's been an event agent for many, many years. He did a little bit of research on this very topic about, possibly seeing if we could get a studio behind wanting to do this for real. And the word that I got back was that the original Star Trek is so fragmented into so many pie pieces, if you will. There are so many people who have a piece of the original series that it would be a logistical, legal nightmare to work it all out to get all of the legal things in line in order to ever do anything like this. That it would literally be a legal nightmare contractually because of so many people and entities that have a percentage of the original Star Trek series. Getting them all to sign off and all of the